One of my first memories as a child is not something most kids get to experience. Most kids remember their favorite toys or even their favorite television program. But me? I remember the day I came face to face with a serial killer. Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you are having a fantastic day so far. I have been constantly trying to think of new content for the channel, and I know you guys like stories, and it just sort of dawned on me out of nowhere the other day that, hey, maybe I should talk about the time that my dad caught a serial killer. Those of you that have been watching my channel for quite some time already know a lot about my dad. But if you don't, that's no problem. I will give you a quick overview. My dad, who is unfortunately no longer with us as of last year, worked as a U.S. Marshal for 22 years. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the role of a U.S. Marshal is, the U.S. Marshal Service is a federal law enforcement agency. It's a bureau within the U.S. Department of Justice, operating under the direction of the Attorney General. The main purpose of the U.S. Marshal Service is to basically act as the enforcement arm for the federal court system. They effectively ensure the smooth operation of the federal courts, as well as maintaining the integrity of the U.S. Constitution. So all that fancy talk basically means they are responsible for protecting federal courts, transporting federal prisoners to those courts. They maintain the witness protection program, and what I think would be the most fun out of any division in the U.S. Marshal Service, and also what my dad worked his entire career, fugitive operations. Your entire job is based around finding top-tier criminals in the United States. If the FBI can't find you, trust me, the U.S. Marshals will. So to give you guys a brief overview, my dad started his career with the U.S. Marshal Service back in 1989, and he retired in 2011. His first duty station, so to speak, was in Dallas, Texas, and that's where he started his first 5 or 6 years of his career. And I could stand here all day and tell you guys some of the crazy stories he's told me over the years, probably some of which he might not want on camera. But the reason why I'm telling you this has a purpose for this specific video. So we actually lived in Mesquite, Texas, which is a suburb outside of Dallas from 1989 to about 1995. And unfortunately, my dad was gone a lot. It was not uncommon for us to be having dinner as a family together at the table, and his pager would go off, and 10 minutes later, he's going out the door in full tactical gear. I also remember him waking me up in the middle of the night. He was still in full gear, and he would just be hugging me. But more on that at the end of the video. I'm not just saying this because he is my dad, but I have actually been approached both before I was a cop and after I was a cop by several people in the U.S. Marshal Service that all have said my dad was a legend in the service. And that makes me proud, so why not share that with you guys? And largely, he made a name for himself because he was not afraid to work, and he would take any job opportunities that were being passed out. So anytime something came up, he would volunteer and be like, I'm in. And over time, that reputation earned him his spot. And of course, the consequence of that is he was gone a lot. And that's something he said he regretted in his final months of life. But anyway, while he was stationed in Dallas, the U.S. Marshals deputies that were working there were on the hunt. They were on the hunt for an individual named Kenneth Allen McDuff. McDuff was also known as the bad boy from Rosebud, but more notably, the broomstick killer. Kenneth McDuff started his crime spree very early in life. When he was only 20 years old, he came across 3 individuals that were inside of a vehicle parked outside of a stadium, and he kidnapped all 3 of them at gunpoint and put them in the trunk of their own car. He then drove to a secluded area with his friend or accomplice that was with him at the time driving his vehicle, and right off the bat, shot the 2 male individuals that were inside the vehicle, put them in the trunk, and left them there. The third person that was there was a female who he then put in the trunk of his car and drove away. The female's name that he kidnapped was Louise Sullivan, and he took her to another location that was also secluded, where he did things to her with a broomstick. For the sake of YouTube, I'll leave it at that and let you use your imaginations. He then used that same broomstick on her neck as he sat on her chest until she died. Now mind you, this happened in 1966, but this is still relevant to this story. I promise you, if you bear with me, all of this will tie together at the end. Here is the crazy part about McDuff's story. He was eventually caught, and he was given 3 death sentences for that triple murder he committed. But they were all reduced to life in prison. Why? Because of a 1972 Supreme Court case called Furman versus Georgia. You guys can Google it if you want to look. That's not the scope of this video, so I'm not going to give a bunch of details about it. So fast forward to 1989 and McDuff was actually paroled. It was largely in part to overcrowding in the prison system, but to parole a serial killer is crazy. But at the time, he wasn't necessarily seen as a serial killer because all three of those people were in the same location and they were all killed in the same night. But it is the United States justice system, so I guess that concept is not that far-fetched. So anyway, McDuff got a job at a gas station for $4 an hour, and it's believed that 3 days after that, he started killing again. There was a body found near where he was working, but nobody could really prove it was him. McDuff ended up going back to prison on a parole violation for threatening to kill an African-American juvenile in Rosebud, Texas. Then in December of 1990, he was released again. In October of 1991, he actually kidnapped a prostitute and was presumably on his way to kill her, which he actually ended up doing, but he was stopped at a police checkpoint. The prostitute then tried to kick out the windshield to get the officer's attention, and as they started walking up to his car, he hit it. And as the story is told, the officers actually had to jump. 3 officers had to jump out of the way to avoid being hit by McDuff. They then followed suit in their vehicles, and they ended up losing him because he turned out his lights and he started going down one-way roads. He then found a secluded area and ended up torturing the prostitute until she finally died, and they did not find her body until 7 years later. I could probably spend the next 20 minutes talking about more murders that he committed after that, but let's get to the conclusion here. Long story short, McDuff ended up killing several more people after this and eventually moved to Kansas City, Missouri. One of his co-workers who happened to watch America's Most Wanted noticed that his co-worker looked oddly like this other guy that he had seen on TV. After double checking with a third co-worker, they both agreed we should call the police. Kansas City police ended up matching up McDuff's fingerprints with his new personality, which was Richard Fowler. That was his new alias that he was going under in Kansas City, and the fingerprints matched. On May 4th of 1992, a surveillance team of U.S. Marshals, including my dad, captured McDuff as he was on his way to a landfill. This would be the last time that McDuff would be a free man. I was really young at the time this actually happened, but my mom took me to the court proceedings because this was a very big deal and it was a very big highlight for my dad in his career at that time. So I actually remember standing outside of the courtroom. I didn't know what this guy had done. I didn't know what a serial killer was. But he actually walked right past me. My dad had one arm, another U.S. Marshal had another one, and there was about 12 other U.S. Marshals surrounding McDuff. And McDuff actually made eye contact with me. I do remember that, even being so young. He looked right at me. He was completely expressionless, like there was nothing there. And then I remember him walking past and they all went into the courtroom, and that is actually the last memory I have of that day. McDuff was finally executed in November of 1998, and he was buried at Peckerwood Hill in Huntsville, Texas. And this is a place where they bury prisoners where their family does not want to claim their remains. So if you guys remember me earlier on in the video telling you about when my dad would come home and I would just be woken up to him just hugging me, and sometimes he would be crying, he finally told me why after I was an adult. He said there were things that he had to see as a U.S. Marshal that bothered him so much that all he wanted to do was come home and hug his son. Whether it was some massacre he had been on the scene of or abandoned children that he had seen time and time again, certain things just got to him. And in turn, it made him worry about me. And now having kids and being in law enforcement myself, I totally understand. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, a little bit different from the usual, but I was really excited to get this out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below and I'll try to address them accordingly. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend and I will see you guys very, very soon.
Across the water.